Most people don't fail because they lack time or talent. They fail because they never follow a clear plan long enough for it to work. If nothing changes in your habits, your focus, or your execution, then 2026 will look exactly like every year before. But the truth is this: one focused 90-day plan can do what years of effort never did. And today, I'm going to show you how most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're unclear. They wake up every day busy, but not intentional, moving, but not progressing, working, but not winning. And that's why 2026 will look exactly like 2025 for most people, but not for you. Because today I want to show you how 90 days, just 90, can change the direction of your entire life. You cannot hit a target you never define. Most people say, I want more money, I want success, I want a better life. That's not clarity, that's wishful thinking. Clarity means deciding, who do I want to become in the next 90 days? What must change for my life to change? What does winning actually look like? When the destination is clear, discipline becomes easier. Confusion creates procrastination. Clarity creates momentum. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you'll act inconsistent. If you see yourself as disciplined, your behavior will follow a 90-day plan. Is not about doing more, it's about becoming someone different. 90 days, you can become the person who keeps promises to themselves, the person who finishes what they start, the person who executes even when it's uncomfortable. Results follow identity, always. Success isn't built in big moments, it's built in daily decisions. Your 90-day plan should have 3 to 5 non-negotiable actions you do whether you feel like it or not. Actions so small they remove excuses. Actions repeated daily until they become automatic. Consistency beats intensity every time. You don't need more motivation, you need fewer decisions. Willpower is overrated, environment is undefeated. If your phone distracts you, it's not a self-control issue, it's a setup issue. If the people around you drain you, that's not bad luck, that's bad alignment. In 90 days, change what you see, change what you hear, change who you listen to. When the environment changes, behavior changes effortlessly, feelings are unreliable, systems are not. You don't wait to feel ready, you move because you're committed. A 90-day plan works because it creates focus. No chasing everything, no reacting to everything, no quitting because it's hard. Winners don't ask, how do I feel today? They ask, what did I commit to? Here's the secret most people miss. The real reward of 90 days isn't the result, it's the momentum. Momentum changes how you think. Momentum changes what you believe is possible. Momentum makes the next 90 days easier and more powerful. When you win one quarter, you stop doubting yourself. And when self-doubt dies, potential finally shows up. 2026 does not need a new version of your excuses. It needs a new version of you. Not next year, not someday, not when conditions are perfect, in the next 90 days. Because when you control the next 90 days, you don't just change a year, you change a life. Clarity before action is the difference between movement and progress. Many people are constantly active, constantly busy, constantly exhausted, yet nothing truly changes in their lives. That's because action without clarity is just motion. You can run all day in the wrong direction and still end up exactly where you started. Before anything meaningful changes on the outside, something decisive must happen on the inside, a clear decision about where you are going and why. Most people don't lack motivation, they lack definition. They say they want success, growth, money, peace, or freedom. But those words are vague. Vague goals produce vague results. When the mind has no clear target, it defaults to comfort, distraction, and habit. Clarity gives the mind a job. It tells your energy where to go. It turns effort into precision. Clarity means you stop asking, what should I do today? And start asking, what must be done to become the person I intend to be? That shift changes everything. When you are clear, you no longer negotiate with distractions. You no longer chase every opportunity. You no longer confuse activity with achievement. You act with purpose, not impulse. Without clarity, people copy what others are doing. They chase trends, formulas, and shortcuts. With clarity, you design a path that fits your goals, your season, and your strengths. Clarity eliminates comparison because you are no longer trying to win someone else's race. You are running your own with a defined finish line. Clarity also exposes excuses. When the goal is unclear, excuses feel justified. When the goal is clear, excuses feel dishonest. You begin to see that procrastination is not a time problem, it's a priority problem. And clarity fixes priorities. It forces you to confront what truly matters and what you've been avoiding. In a 90-day plan, clarity is non-negotiable because short time frames amplify focus. You cannot afford confusion when the window is small. You must know exactly what success looks like at the end of those 90 days. Not in emotional terms, but in measurable terms. What will be different? What will be complete? What will be stronger? What will be eliminated? Clarity creates confidence, not because the path is easy, but because it is defined. You stop guessing. You stop second guessing. You stop starting over. Even when the work is hard, clarity keeps you moving because you know why you're doing it. Purpose fuels perseverance. Most importantly, clarity gives action meaning. Action without clarity drains you. Action with clarity develops you. One builds frustration, the other builds momentum. When clarity comes first, action stops being random and starts being intentional. And intentional action repeated daily over 90 days doesn't just change results, it reshapes identity. Before you move faster, move clearer. Before you do more, decide better. Because when clarity leads, action follows with power, direction, and results that last. Lasting change does not begin with behavior, it begins with identity. What you consistently do is not driven by what you want, but by who you believe you are. That is why so many people set goals and still fall back into old patterns. They try to add new actions to an old self-image. An identity shift is not optional if you want real transformation. It is the foundation. Most people are unconsciously loyal to a version of themselves they have outgrown. They say they want more discipline, more income, more confidence, more impact, yet they continue to see themselves as inconsistent, unprepared, or not that kind of person. Every time behavior conflicts with identity, identity wins. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. A 90-day window is powerful because it is long enough to rewire belief and short enough to demand focus. In 90 days, you may not master everything, but you can absolutely redefine who you are willing to be. Identity shifts do not happen through affirmations alone. They happen through evidence. Every small promise you keep becomes proof. Every disciplined action becomes a vote for a new self-image. You stop saying, I'm trying, and start saying, this is who I am now. You no longer act disciplined, you become disciplined. You no longer chase confidence, you demonstrate it through action. Identity is shaped by repeated decisions, not dramatic moments. What you do consistently trains your nervous system, your mind, and your standards. The reason most people quit early is not because the work is too hard, but because the new identity feels uncomfortable. Growth always feels foreign at first. Consistency feels strange to the inconsistent. Focus feels boring to the distracted. Responsibility feels heavy to those used to excuses. But discomfort is not danger. It is evidence that identity is shifting. In 90 days, you can become the person who shows up even when it's inconvenient. The person who finishes what they start. The person who no longer waits for permission, motivation, or perfect conditions. That version of you already exists. It just hasn't been practiced enough. When identity changes, decision-making becomes automatic. You don't debate whether to do the work. It's simply what someone like you does. You don't need external pressure because internal standards have risen. Discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like alignment. The greatest benefit of an identity shift is self-trust. When you prove to yourself that you do what you say you will do, confidence becomes natural. Doubt loses its grip. You stop negotiating with fear because your actions have already answered the question of who you are. 90 days of intentional behavior can dismantle years of limiting beliefs, not because time is magical, but because repetition is. When you repeatedly act as the person you want to become, the old identity fades, and once identity changes, results are no longer temporary. They are inevitable. Real transformation is never the result of occasional effort. It is the outcome of what you do every day, especially on the days when motivation is low and conditions are imperfect. Daily non-negotiables are the bridge between intention and identity. They remove emotion from execution and replace it with structure. When something is non-negotiable, it is no longer a debate. It is a decision that has already been made. Most people rely on motivation to move forward, but motivation is inconsistent by nature. It rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstance. Non-negotiables bypass motivation entirely. They create progress even when enthusiasm is absent. They allow you to win the day without needing to feel inspired. This is where real discipline is formed. A daily non-negotiable is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right few things consistently. Simplicity is power. When you try to do too much, you create overwhelm. When you commit to a small number of high-impact actions, you create momentum. These actions should be clear, measurable, and achievable no matter how busy the day becomes. Non-negotiables work because they compound. One disciplined action may seem insignificant in isolation, but repeated daily, it becomes transformational. Consistency turns ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes. What feels small today becomes massive over time because repetition multiplies results. Daily non-negotiables also train self-respect. Every time you follow through, you reinforce trust in yourself. Every time you skip them, you weaken that trust. Confidence is not built by thinking positively. It is built by honoring commitments. When you keep promises to yourself daily, self-belief stops being fragile and starts becoming stable. These daily actions also create structure in a chaotic world. Life will always present distractions, emergencies, and unexpected demands. Non-negotiables act as anchors. No matter what happens, these actions remain. They give your day direction even when everything else feels uncertain. Another powerful effect of non-negotiables is decision fatigue reduction. When actions are predetermined, you conserve mental energy. You no longer ask whether you should do the work, you simply do it. This frees your mind to focus on execution rather than resistance. Less thinking, more doing. Over 90 days, daily non-negotiables shape identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who executes. Discipline becomes part of who you are, not something you occasionally practice. The behavior becomes automatic, and automatic behaviors create lasting change. Daily non-negotiables are not about perfection. Missing a day does not mean failure. Quitting does. The standard is consistency, not flawlessness. You return to the commitment immediately without guilt or drama. This mindset keeps momentum alive. When you commit to daily non-negotiables, progress becomes predictable. Results stop being accidental and start being intentional. Over time, these small daily wins build something far greater than motivation ever could, a system that works even when you don't feel like it. Most people believe success is a matter of willpower, but willpower is unreliable. It weakens with stress, fatigue, and decision overload. Environment, on the other hand, works constantly and silently. It influences behavior without requiring effort. That is why environment beats willpower every time. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of what surrounds you. Your environment is shaping you whether you are aware of it or not. What you see daily, what you hear repeatedly, what you interact with, and who you spend time around are all programming your habits and beliefs. If your surroundings reward distraction, comfort, and inconsistency, no amount of motivation will sustain discipline for long. The environment will eventually win. When people struggle to stay consistent, they often blame themselves. They say they lack discipline or focus. In reality, they are fighting an environment that was never designed for success. If your phone is always within reach, distraction is inevitable. If your workspace is chaotic, focus becomes difficult. If the people around you normalize excuses, growth feels unnecessary. This is not a character flaw, it is a design flaw. Changing your environment is not about dramatic moves or perfection. It is about intentional design. Remove what distracts you. Reduce friction for the behaviors you want to repeat. Increase friction for the behaviors you want to eliminate. Make the right actions easier and the wrong actions harder. This is how progress becomes natural instead of forced. Your physical environment matters, but so does your mental and social environment. The conversations you listen to, the content you consume, and the expectations of the people around you shape what you believe is normal. When mediocrity is normalized, excellence feels extreme. When growth is normalized, discipline feels reasonable. In a 90-day plan, environment design is critical because it removes reliance on emotional strength. You are not asking yourself to be strong every day. You are setting up systems that support you even when you are tired. You are not trying to resist temptation. You are reducing exposure to it. This conserves energy and protects consistency. Environment also protects focus. When your surroundings are aligned with your goals, you spend less time recovering from distraction and more time executing. Focus stops being a struggle and becomes the default. This is why high performers are intentional about where they work, who they listen to, and what they allow into their attention. Another overlooked aspect of environment is standards. Your environment communicates what is acceptable. When you place yourself in spaces where discipline, excellence, and growth are expected, your behavior naturally rises. You adapt to the standard of the room. This is not weakness, it is human nature. Over time, the right environment reshapes identity. When your surroundings support productive behavior, consistency becomes easier. When consistency becomes easier, confidence grows. And when confidence grows, you stop needing external pressure to perform. You do not need more willpower. You need better systems and smarter surroundings. When you design an environment that supports your goals, success stops being a struggle and starts becoming a consequence of how you live. Motivation is often celebrated as the driving force behind success, but in reality, it is unstable and temporary. It comes and goes depending on mood, energy, and circumstances. If progress depends on motivation, progress will always be inconsistent. Focused execution, however, does not rely on emotion. It relies on commitment, structure, and repetition. This is why execution outperforms motivation every time. Most people wait to feel ready before they act. They wait for confidence, inspiration, or the perfect moment. That waiting becomes a habit, and that habit becomes delay. Focused execution flips this pattern. You act first, and the feeling follows. Clarity and confidence are often the result of movement, not the cause of it. Focused execution means narrowing your attention to what actually moves the needle. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every opportunity is worth pursuing. Progress accelerates when you eliminate distraction and commit to a small number of meaningful actions. When focus increases, effectiveness increases. When effectiveness increases, results follow. Distraction is not just external, it is internal. Doubt, overthinking, and fear all pull attention away from execution. Focused execution trains the mind to stay present on the task instead of wandering to outcomes, opinions, or imagined failures. You stop asking whether it will work and start doing the work that makes it work. Execution creates feedback, and feedback creates improvement. When you act consistently, you gain real data. You learn what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. Motivation provides excitement, but no information. Execution provides clarity through experience. This is how growth becomes practical instead of theoretical. Another power of focused execution is momentum. Small actions completed consistently build rhythm. Rhythm builds confidence. Confidence builds speed. Once momentum exists, progress feels lighter. You are no longer pushing against resistance. You are moving with direction. This is why disciplined execution often looks effortless from the outside, even though it is intentional underneath. Focused execution also removes emotional negotiation. When your actions are predetermined, you don't debate with yourself. You don't ask how you feel. You follow the plan. This protects energy and preserves consistency. The fewer decisions you make daily, the more energy you have for meaningful work. Over a 90-day period, focused execution compounds. What felt difficult in week 1 becomes normal by week 4. What felt normal becomes automatic by week 8. By the end of 90 days, behavior that once required effort becomes part of your routine. This is not because motivation increased, but because execution was sustained. The greatest advantage of focused execution is reliability. You can count on it. Motivation may inspire a great start, but execution finishes. When you commit to focused execution, progress becomes predictable. And predictable progress is what creates long-term success. Momentum is one of the most underestimated forces in personal transformation. At the beginning of any change, progress feels slow and heavy. Every action requires effort, and resistance feels constant. This is why many people quit early. They judge the process before momentum has time to build. But once momentum is created, the same actions that once felt difficult begin to feel natural. Momentum does not eliminate effort, but it multiplies its impact. Momentum is created through consistent movement in the same direction. Not dramatic leaps, not occasional bursts of intensity, but steady execution. Every completed action adds weight to the next one. Every small win lowers resistance for the following step. Over time, progress accelerates not because you are doing more, but because you are stopping less. In the early stages, discipline carries momentum. Later, momentum carries discipline. This is the turning point most people never reach because they stop too soon. They expect motivation to sustain them when what they actually need is enough repetition to build rhythm. Rhythm turns effort into flow, and flow turns work into progress. Momentum also changes perception. When you are stagnant, challenges feel bigger than they are. When you are moving, problems feel solvable. Progress shifts your mindset from doubt to possibility. You stop asking if change is possible and start asking how far you can go. This mental shift is often more powerful than the results themselves. Another powerful ETH of momentum is confidence. Confidence is not a personality trait, it is a byproduct of follow-through. When you see yourself making progress, even in small increments, self-trust grows. You begin to believe in your ability to handle difficulty because you have evidence that you can. This belief fuels further action, creating a reinforcing cycle. Momentum compounds because success builds on itself. One completed task makes the next task easier. One disciplined week makes the next week more structured. One focused month creates clarity for the next. Over 90 days, these layers stack. What began as intentional effort becomes habitual behavior. What was once fragile becomes stable. Momentum also expands capacity. As consistency increases, so does your tolerance for challenge. You can handle more responsibility, more complexity, and more pressure without breaking rhythm. This is how growth becomes sustainable rather than overwhelming. Perhaps the greatest benefit of momentum is direction. Once you are moving forward, even imperfectly, you are no longer stuck. You are no longer starting from zero. Adjustments become easier because you have something to adjust. Momentum gives you a platform to build on. A 90-day plan works because it gives momentum enough time to form and compound. By the end of that period, you are not relying on hope or motivation. You are operating from movement, confidence, and rhythm. And when momentum is on your side, progress is no longer something you chase. It is something you continue. The truth is, nothing you've heard today works if it stays as information. Knowledge alone does not change lives. Decisions do. What changes everything is what you choose to do next, not what you understood in this moment. You don't need to reinvent your life. You don't need years of planning. You need a focused commitment to the next 90 days. 90 days of clarity instead of confusion. 90 days of discipline instead of delay. 90 days of intentional action instead of emotional reaction. When you stack clarity, identity, daily non-negotiables, the right environment, focus execution, and momentum, something powerful happens. You stop chasing change and start becoming it. Progress stops feeling accidental and starts feeling inevitable. By the end of those 90 days, the greatest change will not be what you achieved. It will be who you trust yourself to be. You will think differently. You will move differently. You will expect more from yourself because you have proven what you are capable of. The future does not change on January 1st. It changes the moment you decide to take responsibility for direction instead of hoping for a different outcome. Control the next 90 days, and you don't just influence 2026. You define it. The question is no longer whether change is possible. The only question left is whether you will start